important topic, and this is especially also very important for students. So I hope as many students as possible join this session. We are looking at delivering effective presentations. That is a tool that every person who is in the sciences and indeed in academia really needs to be able to communicate whatever they are doing effectively to the outside world. And we are very, very lucky to have a very experienced person to join us for this session. But before I introduce her, let me just state that we will be starting on this session of Zoom. There's a webinar account which doesn't have a breakout session. We are going to have a breakout session into smaller groups that will allow for more effective Q&A. So as this presentation goes on, we are going to post another link for a regular Zoom account that will allow us to have those breakout sessions. So immediately we finish with this session, we will move the Q&A into a breakout session whose link will be posted in this presentation or in this session, so that we can all join that second link and have smaller groups and therefore make it more effective for Q&A. I hope that is clear. I'll put in messages in the chat from time to time. So our presenter today is Professor Dorcas Obiri-Yeboah, and I'll just put something little, or just say something little about her. In fact, I got something very little. I wasn't so happy with the little she decided I should say, so I have added to it. So I hope she doesn't get offended. So Professor Dorcas Obiri-Yeboah is an associate professor of clinical microbiology in the Department of Microbiology and Immunology, School of Medical Sciences, University of Cape Coast in Ghana. She is a clinician scientist whose research and clinical practice focuses on infectious diseases using a multi/interdisciplinary approach. She currently has over 100 peer-reviewed journal publications to her credit and has contributed to many national and international policy guideline documents. She is a former dean of the School of Nursing and Midwifery and currently a deputy director for the Directorate of Research, Innovation and Consultancy, UCC, under the Vice Chancellor's Office. Prof Obiri-Yeboah is also a member of the National Pediatric HIV Task Team, an advisory board member for West African Network of Excellence for TB, AIDS, and Malaria, known as WANITAM. She is a member of the WHO Guideline Development Group for Cervical Cancer Screening. She also holds membership of organizations such as the International AIDS Society, International Papilloma Virus Society, the African Society for Laboratory Medicine, Medical Women's Association of Ghana, Society of Laboratory Physicians Ghana, Organization of Women in Science for the Developing World, and West Africa Health Organization Infectious Disease Network. So that should tell you the caliber of person we have sharing her knowledge and experience with us today. So I would, on this note, welcome Professor Dorcas Obiri-Yeboah to share with us what she has for us today. Prof, over to you.
Thank you very much. So yes, you've added a lot more, but that is fine. So good morning, everybody. And I'm going to share the slides and then we can begin. So as you have been informed, the topic today says delivering effective scientific presentation. So at the end of it, you can judge and decide whether I did a good delivery or not. So it's already a test for this presentation itself. And then hopefully we can all get something out of it also. And hopefully in the short group sessions, I believe that we can have more discussions and then you could bring any questions that are not covered, experiences you have. So we are going to basically do a bit of an intro, look at what we mean when we talk about scientific presentations, and then delve into that issue of what the content should be like and the delivery, and of course, some concluding remarks. So I want this to be a bit participatory, and if this was a physical one, I would spend a bit of time on this next question. So work with me on this, please. And so it's asking you to think back a little, just think back to the last lecture or presentation, seminar you were in that was memorable, something that you finished and felt, yes, you learned something, or this was really good. So what made it memorable? In a word or two, please use the chat to just tell us what you think. And if you can make sure you are sharing with everyone, then people can see. So just think back to that last presentation you thought was good. What made it memorable? What made you feel it was a good presentation? So I'm hoping to begin to see one or two words pop up in the chat. And as they do, I would also be mentioning it to the group just in case someone is not sending to all. So I have the first one, and we have a winner here with the first comment. Said the slides were well designed. Thank you very much. So that is what made it memorable to this person. Again, organization of the slides. And then there is one, it says the joke. So somebody made a presentation night with a lot of jokes, eh? Engaging, use a video. There was a silly visual aid. The presentation was interactive. It was nice and communicative images. The slides laid out and not using strange words. Okay, that's a good one. The topic was followed. The presenter made us understand what he was saying by explaining well. Infographics, interactive nature, content was logical presentation, cartoons. Thank you very much. A lot are coming, and that is very good. So you have all had experience with what you consider as very good presentations. What about this one? The topic we have today inserted the word scientific. So is there general presentation and scientific presentation? Does it make a difference? What do you think? Again, in a few words, what do you think? What makes a presentation scientific and not a general one? Any thoughts on that? So that we are sure that we are all in the same place. So that someone says the content makes a difference. So the contents make it different. So the content of a scientific presentation versus the content of a general presentation, Akosia says there will be differences. So the other one say it has to do with your audience too. So the people you are talking to could make it scientific or not. So the content towards science field. Yes. So I guess we are all by this saying that there are different types of presentations. Sometimes, and I would always try to use examples by myself so that I don't put somebody in any spot. So if I'm invited to speak to people as a woman in science and how that feels, or a medic in academia and how that feels, or a female medic in academia. Fortunately or unfortunately, I've met a number of weird narrow groups, and therefore you get invited to give these presentations. And usually they sound more like an advocacy and trying to create awareness of something. So like somebody says, the audience talking to female accountants about cervical cancer screening, the content and delivery is very different and should be different from picking the same slides and going to do it at the Human Papilloma Virus Conference on cervical cancer prevention. So I think with these two, you've been very well involved and you've shared your experience, and I'm very happy with that. So of course, when we talk about scientific presentations, we do them in different contexts. So conferences, grant applications, when you have to pitch an idea, when you have a viva coming, and some of you here may be preparing for that. There are seminars that our students have to do, or as researchers, we have to attend and present. At the end of it, whichever version it is important that we all recognize that we want to communicate. We really want to communicate so that we can say at the end of it, the purpose for that presentation was achieved, it was effective. So this is how someone put it. So I've stolen a few slides from a friend who is very good at putting concepts into images. And this one is one that I like. There are two sides to every presentation. So the content and the delivery. And this came out quite well when you were talking about what made some presentation memorable for you or not. I could see the elements of content, the elements of delivery. So moving forward, we are going to try and work with this in mind that, okay, so if you are doing a scientific presentation, how would you ensure the content is effective and then effectively communicated? How do you make sure that these two complements each other so that at the end of it, you had a really good presentation? So in a scientific presentation of research findings, and there's always a story we are trying to tell. So if you can always think about it this way, and that is what I tell my info students and others when they are preparing for their presentation, what is the story? What did you want to do and why? Why would you want to do that? So in the end, what did you actually do? Can you tell somebody clearly what you did? What did you find? And so what? So what you found, and so what? What does that mean for us? What do we need to do next? How is that finding important? If you can think about a storyline like this and see whether from the beginning of your presentation to its end, you've answered these questions, then you could say you've done an effective presentation covering both content and delivery. So let's take some general examples or points to remember in terms of doing the content, preparing the slides. And I'm going to show you a number of examples, some good, some not examples you should follow in my perspective. But at the end of it, I'm sure you've also meant a number of things. And if we're discussing this, you could bring about a number of points. Of course, who is your audience would matter. If I'm going to present my work on cervical cancer and HPV to an audience that already knows what HPV is and how we get it and where it stays, I'm not going to spend time boring them. So what do they already know? And if I'm going to say something they already know at all on the content, I have to make sure there is a reason I'm putting that there to make a specific point, remind us or bring us to a certain point. What do you want them to understand at the end of it and remember? So the audience is important. You really know to know your target. That is why the same topic, you can be asked to deliver it to different audience and you cannot use the same slides, but the topic can be maintained and the content can be delivered appropriately. So at the end of it, whatever content you put down must answer this question. Why should they care about your research? So this is where in your background and problem statement, that side, you make sure that in very short, concise ways, you communicate why this is a problem, why they have to care about this work that you do. And in thinking about that, some people bring about any personal connection. There are different audiences that this may work with, and for some purposes, it might not work to state a personal connection, but where applicable, do that. But whatever the case, situating a research work in the SDGs is always important. It helps clearly identify that this is topical, this is worth doing. And tell us a story with the results. Don't just repeat some statistics and tell us long things that the people may in the end start losing the point. So the main findings should stand out. Your statistics should be something you can explain, especially going back with the audience. So saying that the odds of HIV positive women having cervical cancer was 4.5% with the confidence interval of blah, blah, blah. The question is, have you truly communicated what this means? To a certain audience, yes. To another audience, no. Of course, whatever the case, remember in the end to end with a good summary or conclusion. Some people have problems with saying take-home message. They will say that it means of all the things you said, that last message you are saying is the only thing they should remember is worth taking home. Well, but if you are doing presentation in another context, if it's scientific presentation, it might be that some particular message is a take-home message. So these are points to consider. And of course, most times there would be a Q&A if it is the arrangement. Just be ready for it. How do you be ready for it? Anticipate possible questions, prepare responses for them. And where you do not know, it is not a crime. So stay calm. Be ready that there might be some questions that throw you off, but where if you force yourself to answer, you may rather show a lack of knowledge. And so it may be safer to say, this one, I think we need to discuss again. I'll read on it. So that is generally some thoughts on how you look at the content. And I'm going to, from here, use some examples of things. If you are talking your methodology, we are used to, this was a cross-sectional study, and in the first part, I did this and did that. You could do a simple, and I'm not saying these examples are perfect, but the point is you can use visual things to make text very little while still communicating that this was a 3 studies in one, or as people put it, work package 1, work package 2, work package 3, whatever the case, and how they relate to each other. And in each session, if the method was different, you could show that. You would want to do something like this than to say, I enrolled 1,249 participants, and then I did the HPV genotyping, and then from there, 1,200, and you're already bored. I hope you are not sleeping. It's not my fault. It is how sometimes people present these things. But this gives you a way to visualize the flow and what the person did. So it's scientific information there, but adding a visual makes it easier for people to comprehend and follow the process. And the biggie, animations. Of course, they are helpful. And they are helpful also in scientific presentations. They can help based on the movement and others to highlight unique information. They can help you manage time by quickly letting people know what to focus on, especially when there are a number of things on this, a picture or a slide. And it could help with reducing complexity. But please don't do this one in a scientific presentation, and the things move from there, and then there is a sound, then you move back, all of that. Even in non-scientific, in good presentations, really, they are not very good. So again, with animations also and additional issues about how illustrations and pictures can help out, I'm going to give some examples again so that you can see what we are talking about. So pictures are useful. They can really help in a presentation. They point out similarities, they point out differences. So if you are talking about filariasis, so you can see elephantiasis, this is the real elephant's foot, and what happens to a person's leg when this disease attacks it. So you can really use a picture to say things that allow you to have very few texts on the slide, but engage the audience and they can follow. You can do illustration that allow you to, again, use very little words and combine with a bit of animation to point out where you are focusing on and allow people to immediately hone on to that. So this issue has nothing to do with the rest of the uterus and the vaginal canal and the rest. An illustration like this just clearly shows people where you are focusing on, and it allows you to move on faster. If you want to talk about the natural history of cervical cancer, you could really need 4 slices, if not more than 4 slides, to just make the point that this slide is trying to make. In here, an attempt to show what actually happened when a woman is born, gets HPV, what could happen, and if it persists over the years, what happens. The arrow directions are also informative. It means that from getting HPV, a person could actually go back to here if they cleared it fully. It means that a person who even starts showing lesions could get back here. This could be helped to reverse, but it tells you that once you have invasive cancer, you cannot. This is a short way of showing something that could be very complex. And you can also show the points of possible intervention. And if your research that you are going to present relates to any particular part of this, you can easily use color or something to point out, so like this, and this could mean that in this particular presentation, your work was on the issue about persistent infection and then those with cervical cancer. Whichever way, you can find a way to make this very informative. Of course, a common one we use are the tables and figures, isn't it? And that is where sometimes your thesis, you have how many pages of tables and you don't know what to put down and what not to put down when you are presenting at the Viva or at the scientific conference. Whatever the case, whichever you select, thoughtfully select, must be able to stand alone, be informative, have a clear description, use legends to help people to appreciate the content very quickly. And if animations are needed to direct attention to something, use them so that you can quickly tell people on this particular table, this is what I want you to focus on in terms of comparing the results from a pap smear versus visual inspection. This is what you want them to look at. And you could then add on and show. Please, if I left this for you to read and tell me what is the most important point on this, you will either get up and leave or fall asleep. It's going to be difficult for you to go through it. Of course, don't use this kind of tables. It may be too complex, but if you have to, again, combine it with some animations or highlights to quickly focus people on what they should look at. And don't do this. This was what does it mean? Pie charts can help in presenting things that have a number of options coming together to form 100%, but please, this is irrelevant. We cannot understand what it means. We can't make any head of it. And this is not informative at all. Is this bigger than this? Is this bigger than that? So if you have to use this, which the number of categories being shown here are not many, this is fine, but make sure that we can see the percentages. Is this bigger than this? People shouldn't be left to discuss and think through. It should be clear what these stand for and what the proportions represent so that people can understand. So let's assume that up to this point, we've talked about all the things that sort of make the content well developed and likely to be best for you. What are some of the tips and tricks for good presentation? Again, if I give you a minute, please work with me in the chat. Can you put down, so now we are talking about the delivery. Can you use a word or two to talk about what you think would make the delivery good? If you can work with me with that, it would be helpful. So again, I'm looking at the chat to see what tips and tricks people have for a good presentation. So of course, that good presentation could be a scientific presentation. It could be a general presentation of life as a woman in academia or whatever. So clear speech, eye contact, proper gestures, interactive. Yes, the words are coming, so that if my work is done, I'll just say for tips and tricks, refer to the charts. So any more precise and straight to the point. Okay, very good. Any more? I hope you are there. Tell a story to connect the slides. Few text on the PPT. Thank you all. For the sake of time and trying to manage my time, do not read the points on your slides, okay? Let me see what I have here, and if there is any. Don't forget, it always starts with how you are. So look, no matter what level you get to, depending on the group you are going to present to and what you are going to present, and nerves can come up a bit. So you need to find tips and tricks on how you control your own nerves and build your confidence. What works for me may be completely different from what works for you. So it is more of knowing who you are and what calms you down and what makes you settle in. And this is where sometimes even the network of your friends who know you have a presentation would be useful. Let me tell you a little side story. Towards this presentation today, I had made someone aware that I have this presentation today. And then, so as a means of motivating me, I woke up this morning to just a picture. No word about all the best with the presentation, go get them, or no, a picture. That picture did all, because that person knows it would do the trick in terms of getting me the message that you've got this. So what tells you you've got it? What makes you feel good? It's important. No matter how good the content is, if you start standing there shaking and your voice is breaking and your thought get blocked, it's a mess. So first, make sure you can deal with that. And then how do you keep your audience engaged? You don't want to lose them. The voice, which somebody mentioned in a chat, and I hope I'm sitting in this room and hope and pray you can hear me very well. So whether physical or virtual, people need to be able to hear you. And of course, these others all build around it. Before you even open your mouth to say something, people pick on the voice a lot. And that is why that is the first thing that was there. But don't forget, you communicate even before a word. Your appearance. Are you feeling confident in looking professional? Are you going to be the one to walk into a conference page to present and they are asking whether you are the personal assistant just bringing the person's bag, or they see you and they feel, yes, this could be our presenter. It affects even you, how you feel about yourself. And of course, your body language. Standing there and pretending this is even boring you yourself will bore everybody else also. Be well prepared. That cannot be overemphasized. If you know your slides and its content is helpful. In presenting, there is the value of pauses. Sometimes you pause just to let something sink in. Let people say, this is true. Okay, then you come back and continue. Use them well based on what you are presenting and get feedback from people. Depending on the presentation situation, feedback can be asked. You ask somebody directly, have you experienced this before? Have you felt this before? Can you put in the chat? So whichever version. And feedback can be non-verbal. Look at people's faces. Are they all struggling to stay away? Are they begin to stand up and stretch their legs? So I can't see you all what you are doing there, but I'm hoping and praying you are fully with me and engaged. So use some means of getting feedback from the audience. Appropriate eye contact. Appropriate, meaning don't fix your eye on one person and scare them to death or make them so jittery. If you have additional notes, which can be helpful depending on what you have, stick to it. Somebody said, don't read your slides. So you may have some notes and others, but you do not need to get stuck with it. People do presentations where the slides like a rainbow. So you are sorting out, does the red have a meaning, does the yellow, is it relevant to what is written in it, and all of that. Please, it may not be helpful. And ensure every slide is readable. And always remember, it is PowerPoint, not power paragraphs or power book or power sentences. It's PowerPoint. And so less is always more. And this one, I am very particular, respect people's times. no matter how good your presentation is, if you were given 30 minutes and it's so nice, they may be with you at 32 and 33, and then before you realize everybody is doing this and doing that, please never get the reputation of being someone who never sticks to time. There are people whose presentation I really enjoy, but I always have a problem when they are on a program because I know time would not be managed well. Whatever the case, with your content, with your delivery, with everything you do, let your story that you are telling in a presentation be logical. Let it be coherent, plausible, evidence-based. And this very important one, again, this is a slide I stole with permission. Let it be honest. So people should be able to tell when you said you did this research that you actually did it. You know your methods, you know the statistics, you understand the findings, and therefore you can put it in a proper context for them. That is very important. And if you combine that with appropriate time management, it gives people opportunity to value what you've said. And if they have questions, that is what Q&As are for. So for example, for me, I would always have, as I have here now, a timer giving me prompt as to whether I am working within time or not. And something that can help is having a friend who prompts you. And always, always let somebody you trust look over your slide, possibly once at a point, to even see, is it coherent? Is it flowing? Are you providing enough evidence for the conclusions that you are going to draw? If you have such people helping you, it will be something you practice over time and get there. So it says here, summary and conclusion. So this is something that is always important and part of most scientific presentations, that you tell us your conclusion. So at the end of it all, what you find, this is where the question I put earlier, that and so what? So you found this, so and so what? What do we do with the information? That is very important. And here I'm going to try to summarize everything I have been saying in the past 27, 28 minutes to see whether you consider this conclusion effective or not. But in every scientific presentation, and in fact, in every presentation, it is required that you conclude in a way that gets people to be happy with the point you ended on. So I am reading these word for word now. I'm saying making impactful scientific presentation is a soft skill to be acquired and developed over time. So I have nowhere said I have arrived in that my presentations are always good and great. No, you need to keep working on it. Good content and good delivery, they will complement each other. Remember that image that we showed of complementarity, so that the whole is a great story that people can remember. And in this, we've tried to highlight some of the pitfalls. And so you have to watch out for them. If it comes to tables, how you make sure they are meaningful and don't fall in showing tables nobody can read. If it's animation, how good they can be, illustration, how good they can be, but how you can also overuse them or use the wrong types. So we need to keep these pitfalls in mind. And in fact, this is one of the things I would want somebody to cross-check when I have done a slice and ready to present, that am I overdoing something on it? And even with the presentation, so when I asked for what you remember as a good presentation, somebody put down the jokes. That is great. It can be fun and it can help. But imagine coming to your Viva and then coming to stand there and start telling us jokes that you want the people to laugh. You may end up in trouble rather. So anything you want to do to make your presentation good or effective, just watch out for the pitfall associated with it so that you do not overdo it. In the end, practice, 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 practice. I don't know how many practices I have to put here, but it is about doing this over time and building the skill over time. Before you realize, over the years, you get better. So if I pick my earlier presentations, even for my PhD, even the Viva and all of that, if I were to do it today, it would be definitely much different than what I did then. So let's work on it and talk to experienced people, try to steal their ideas, incorporate them, practice with people, take opportunity to present, don't dodge. Seminar for PhD students, is any of you ready to present your, no. Take opportunity to practice. If you do it, at the end of it, it says practice make perfect. We may never get perfect, but you'll get close to it. And on that note, I thank you very much for your attention, and hopefully your coffee that you took this morning was enough. You didn't need an additional cup to stay awake till now. So thank you very much, and over to you, Professor Moore.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof Obiri-Yeboah. I think we can all acknowledge the fact that this has been a very eye-opening session. I have picked up a few points to help me improve myself. And what I didn't mention in the beginning is that Prof Obiri-Yeboah, maybe she doesn't know, but she's one of my mentors. So I always pick tips from her. And this has been a very good session. If you look in the chat, you see a link has been posted for breakout sessions. For the ease of having as much interaction as possible, we want to have at least the entire attendance broken down into at least 3 sessions so that we can have more close interactions. So what I would suggest is everybody can log out of this and get into the new session with the link indicated. And then when you get into that new session, you automatically be added to one of 3 groups. There will be 1 or 2 people in there who you can start interactions with. Prof Obiri-Yeboah will go through the different sessions, and if there are any specific questions that are directed at her, that she can respond to them. So please, let's log out of this, get into the new session with the link that is provided, and then we will continue with the meeting in that session. I hope that is clear. Okay. Thank you all very much, and thank you, Prof, for such a wonderful, wonderful delivery. We'll continue on the other side. Let me get in here.